All right, you are tuned into MMA Canada and very excited to be talking to an individual ahead of the UFC's next foray into the Great White North. It goes down November 2nd in Edmonton, and a bantamweight bout that's certainly catching my attention as well as the attentions of many, I would presume, is Pedro Munhoz taking on Aiemann Zahabi, and great getting to have Aiemann on the MMA Canada platform ahead of this Pedro Munhoz fight. How are you doing, man?
I feel great, man. Thanks, Dylan, for having me on.
Yeah, it seems like a great time for you, man. Just the sights set on the fifth straight win. Like it seems like there's a lot of momentum for sure. And I was seeing some recent interviews where you're talking about how you have more UFC fights now than you did like prior MMA fights. So it seems like a very interesting time in the sense of it seems like a lot of things are getting really firmly locked in, it would seem like.
Yeah, I feel like momentum's on my side for this one. I feel like in terms of like how things have been going the last few fights, things are really picking up and a lot more consistent in my performance than I was before. So I'm really happy with that. I'm going to take that in with me to this fight as well. My confidence is really high and things are really good. Now it's just about managing it all and not being overhyped, not to underestimate anybody or anything like that, and to just know that I'm going up against a veteran who's only lost to the people in the top 10, top 15. And, to mark my place at the UFC, it would be good to get a win over such a high experienced veteran.
Yeah, for sure. And so much to talk about with this fight coming up. But I feel like I'd also be remiss if I didn't touch on the Javid Basharat fight in March
Yeah.
because it seemed like a comprehensive performance there, getting the unanimous decision. And I mean, not that I imagine this would matter a great deal to you, but it seemed like some of the rhetoric after the fact was kind of centric on you getting like such a big underdog victory, which is kind of interesting. I mean, what were your thoughts on just like the last performance and just all the subsequent fallout, I suppose?
I mean, I was really happy with my performance. I think it went really, really well. I ended up like having to solve some problems in there in terms of like solving the reach problem, the speed problem, the distance problem. He was doing a real good job in round one. I feel like he won the first round. Some people think I won first round, but I think he won first round, and then I was able to take it over in rounds two and three. And it was the first time my brother told me I had high fight IQ, so I'm very happy. It doesn't give compliments easy, my brother. So it was nice to get that. He was really, really, really happy with how I dealt with it, and I think like I stayed very um controlled in my performance throughout. Even like after my first, I threw like a really big right hand in the first round, and when I missed it, he started trash talking me right away, Javid. But I didn't let it affect me. Just like when Tercios was talking to me, I'm just in my mind, I'm here to do work. And if you want to talk and make jokes and whatever, that's fine. But I'm focused on winning the fight. I'm not focused on what you're saying. I'm here to do work. And if you want to talk trash and be distracted or entertain the crowd, that's up to you. I'm here to win. You know.
Yeah, and it is kind of interesting because I sort of mentioned it in the way that I had framed the question because I was actually seeing that across the four victories within your current streak you have here. Apparently, you were the betting underdog in all of these fights. Like, what is it these odds makers are missing? I seen a post-fight scrum where you were saying like, "Oh, well, it's not like it's guys like Firas or some of the big minds in the game, curating these odds and everything like that." But it is kind of curious because it seems to go against the empirical evidence you're putting out there.
Yeah, well, I guess everyone has counted me out as a prospect or as any good ever since I lost by KO in Madison Square Garden. But I don't feel like the result justifies the performance. Like I felt like, yeah, okay, round one it was close. He ended up taking me down. He got my back at like the very last few seconds of the first round. And round two, I turned it all around. Like I shut him down completely. I stopped all takedowns. I landed the more powerful strikes. I landed more strikes than him. I evaded his spinning elbows in round two, and then in round three, basically I went in there just to finish him. I was too egotistical. It was more. I felt like listen, he threw the elbow, but it was more my cockiness. I feel like that was the culprit of getting KO'd than anything else, and I feel like I deserve the blame for underestimating him in the third, and good on him for throwing the elbow for sure. But I don't think it means I'm a terrible fighter because I made one mental mistake. It doesn't mean. But I feel like people don't see it as didn't take it as a mental mistake. They took it as I have no skills. So I feel like that's why I've been the underdog for a while. And then obviously the fight after I lost a close decision, but because mentally I was still I thought I'd overcome the KO, but I hadn't at the time. And I realized only in the fight against Vince Morales that I still needed to work on the mental side of it.
Yeah, and I mean now you're at a point where I believe there's only two other bantamweights that have longer winning streaks than you, and that includes the current champion Merab Dvalishvili and Mario Bautista, who fights this weekend as of the time of this recording. So, I mean, just great stuff, man. Like, it seems like you really gleaned a lot from those earlier experiences and whatnot. I mean, you're on the TriStar gym wall now after 20 years, too. So that's big.
Yeah, exactly, man. My brother finally put me up there, which is nice. It's really cool. And you know, it's nice to be a part of that, like having a good winning streak for sure. And now it's about keeping that streak going and fighting more often and getting and stringing more fights together in a year. You know, that's gonna be the next big step. So like now I'm fighting, eight months later or whatever it is, and I'm excited to do that, get back in there, and they're giving me like a really good name too as well. And I'm excited to fight 4 months after this one.
And it's interesting because in terms of venues, you've kind of been all over the place. Like you referenced it there with the setback in the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. And then even from that, with like the last one being at the UFC Apex, like what's it like getting to compete in Canada here? Like it seems like you've kind of gotten all the different sort of live event kind of looks, and you've obviously fought all throughout Canada in a variety of provinces. I believe this is your first UFC fight in Alberta. But yeah, I mean, definitely there would be that partisan sort of presence and that support for you there. So, like, what are your thoughts on getting to fight on this Edmonton card here?
Well, I'm hoping they're there for me. I'm hoping that the Canadian crowd gets behind me, and the last time I had to like kind of incite the ole ole, and then they gave it back to me, which was great. So I'm hoping that if I start really pulling it away in this one, they cheer me on during, and I don't have to ask for it. That would be sick. But other than that, I think Canadian fans are great. They show up all the time. They always sell out the events in UFC, and you know what? Like I say this all the time in like in different interviews, but it's a true thing. Like Canadians are fight fans, whether it's hockey, boxing, kickboxing, karate. Like we have such a deep tradition of like loving fights, no matter what kind of rule set it is. And we're just I feel like we have a strong character in that sense as Canadians.
Yeah, there's something about it that just resonates for sure. Like, it seems like a lot more bare knuckle is coming through Canada now, and UFC has done multiple events this calendar year alone in Canada.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for sure. It seems like there's something about fighting that resonates with the Canadian people.
Yeah, 100%. For as nice as we are, don't take our kindness for weakness type thing.
And something I find fascinating, I've been talking to so many fighters about this, both fighters who are fighting for outside promotions and stuff like that, and even more recently, specifically fighters on this card. Just the fact that this will be the first UFC event that uses these newly amended rules and stuff like that, just with that differentiating idea for what constitutes a grounded opponent and the 12 to 6 elbows being legal. Like, obviously, you're a very cerebral fighter from what I've gotten from you over the years, and you have someone like Firas in your corner. Like, do the preparations, I guess, change a great deal to be considerate to those rule changes, both offensively and defensively?
Yeah, of course. I feel like it's kind of gonna change people's responses to certain situations because knees and elbows are a brutality. I don't care. As many as the fans have been dying for this rule to change and whatever, you're gonna see totally different groundwork because of it. So we're gonna see who's able to adapt to the new rules and the modern game now. Like now, this will be the modern game. It's like bringing back, the pride sense of that like danger. Like there's a supreme danger now because now you can really destroy someone with elbows from almost anywhere, not including the feet. And now the knees, guys can't do that Aljamain Sterling technique where you camp out on your hands and feet. You have to actually put a knee down. And when you put that knee down, man, you're giving up your back. You're giving up different opportunities for the guy to score big. So we're gonna see how people respond. I'm expecting to see a lot more Granby rolls, a lot more high risk, high reward type defensive maneuvers to avoid getting kneed in the head.
Yeah, so like from what you're saying, you'll think it'll almost promote even, I guess, greater fluidity of action because it seems like that, Aljamain Sterling style of, working the grounded opponent kind of angle. It kind of grinds the fight to a halt in a certain sense. Like you're thinking that maybe there's going to be, like you said, the high risk, high reward kind of techniques whereby I guess the fluidity of the fight will kind of carry forward more so, you're thinking?
Because now you can squeeze in elbows in a tighter space now. You know what I mean? It's gonna be interesting to see how guys can use this rule to go for the offense. And the guys on defense, let me tell you something. It's gonna hurt. I don't care what anybody says. You think you're tough or whatever, blah blah. Elbows hurt, man. And if we can squeeze in more elbows, guys are gonna find a way to get out of there. They're not gonna sit on the bottom and just relax.
Yeah, no, it'll definitely be an interesting sort of thing to see. Just kind of cool that this, I guess, new permutation of the sport is gonna, kick off in Canada and stuff like that. There's something to that for sure. But just with you being a rising bantamweight in the UFC and having a fight against, such a tenured opponent in the division earlier, as you had kind of alluded to, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on the relatively recent title switch there. Like, what were your thoughts on, I guess, Merab Dvalishvili's performance and just thoughts on the overall Sean O'Malley fight he had there?
Really interesting fight, man. And listen, I know O'Malley is he's like a very he has a lot of energy, wildcat, this and that. So I was kind of like wondering whether or not he was gonna be able to stick to the game plan for the entirety of the fight. Like in terms of like not getting hit with a punch that Sean was able to hit Aljamain, crossing the distance. And you know what? He did a great job of staying very far away and then in his legs. He didn't hang around in the mid range where Sean would have really highlighted him with like a flying knee or step back right hand or some kind of straight shot up the middle. It was really, really interesting that for as energetic and frantic as he looks, he still has a great mind and he performs very well. He knows what's important, he knows what matters. And honestly, Merab is a tough fight for anybody. He's just how does he have both crazy cardio and crazy power for 25 minutes? It's like
Yeah.
he's a puzzle on his own. But like the drawback of him is that he doesn't finish most guys.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting sort of style. Like, it seems like a code that has been very difficult for, I guess, a few people to crack, like, at least as far as the people he's anecdotally, gotten in there with. But yeah, I mean, just such an interesting time in the division. Like, I've seen some dialogue around if, Sean O'Malley might get an immediate rematch for the title, or if they go the route of Umar or Nurmagomedov, who seems to be kind of on the precipice of getting a crack at the belt in his own
Yeah.
right. Like, who do you think will get that next UFC title fight?
And it looks like, listen, the machine's pushing Umar. It seems like the Twitter fans, like I'm on Twitter a little bit and I feel like everyone's trying to force him into that fight with Umar. And he's saying that he doesn't deserve it. He's only fought one top 15 guy, which to be honest, like I'm not paying attention to Umar right now. Like I don't know if that's true. Is that true? I don't know. And he might want to fight someone else. And it's interesting because with Sean O'Malley didn't fight Merab, and Merab was the tougher fight initially, but they gave Cheeto the fight before Merab, right? And I think Cheeto was number 5 or number 6. I'm not 100% sure when he got the title fight, but like that was weird. That was weird. And I picked Sean to beat Merab in terms of prediction because I know the fight always starts on the feet and he has such good range control usually, Sean, and he's able to throw strikes down the middle. And we've seen Merab get rocked before in the past. So I thought maybe Cheeto had a good shot, but he could have landed strikes and he got demoralized, I found in the fight. But Merab is so mentally tough. Even if he was getting clipped and whatever, I don't think he would ever get demoralized. And I think the mental strength might come into play against Umar. Did you watch the fight against Umar versus Corey Sanhagen?
Yeah, it
One
was
thing that I
interesting. Yeah.
one thing that I found about that fight was after round one, he looked kind of nervous, Umar. Listen, I don't know, but I'm just saying from what it appeared to. But Khabib did such a good job of being in his corner and telling him, it's fine, you're going to take him down again. Because when he first took down Corey did a super good job of like rolling, grabbing, defending the wrestling well. Umar didn't just dominate him on the ground. It almost looked like Umar wasn't expecting Corey to be able to defend that well, and he kind of looked shell shocked a bit. But Khabib did such a good job of telling him, no, stick to the game plan. It's going to work out over time. and keep going. And then you see Umar adjusted really, really well mentally. And then he kept going. And then the fight kept being more and more in his favor as it went on. So it's going to be interesting. Merab versus Umar, I think it's going to come down to the mindset, you know? We'll see.
Yeah, so many interesting possibilities for sure. And I guess I'd kind of thought to ask this, just even having seen like a few months ago, you got to train with Patchy Mix, and it seemed like you got in some great rounds. And I actually had the opportunity to talk to Patchy Mix ahead of that Bellator Chicago card circa around a year ago at this point. He was talking about sparring 7 or 8 championship fights with Merab Dvalishvili. Like, I guess at this point, like, who would you, I guess, tout as the best bantamweight in the overall sport of mixed martial arts at this juncture? Because I feel like probably a lot of people would look at either Marab or maybe even Patchy Mix, just being that they're, both title holders and obviously a lot of great ranked contenders in the UFC. But what would your thought be on, I guess, who you would give that moniker to?
I mean, so besides me.
Sure, yeah, yeah, exactly, right?
I mean, I don't know, man. Apache, we only got to do jujitsu, so I didn't get to do any striking with him. So I don't really know, uh, how we line up striking wise and stuff. I've seen him fight. He's a great fighter and things like that. But I don't know. It's hard to say because really, it's styles make matchups. I don't feel like there's ever really one guy who's the best ever, the GOAT who can beat every single guy every time. I don't think there is any guy like that right now. I really feel like it's a matchup thing. We're in an era of the bantamweight division is so good. It's so good. It's who gets the best matchups. Usually, who's gonna rise to the top right now, and I don't think anybody really stands shoulders and above anybody.
Yeah, and I guess kind of part of it too is probably like the adage that you've referenced in our prior interview and some other interviews where George St. Pierre had imparted to you that it's kind of about who's like the best on the actual night in and of itself too. So that's kind of like a big tendril to the whole thing too.
Yeah, definitely. But like, just to touch on because you brought up GSP, but GSP cleared his division a few times, and I don't know anybody which bantamweight champion cleared the division. I don't know. I mean, Dominic Cruz was probably the best bantamweight champion uh, during his time. During his reign, he was the best. Like the alpha male guys, one after the other, came up to take a swing at him, and he kept sending them back home. I think in terms of best champion, he's probably the most decorated bantamweight champion. And then I would say, TJ was close second, but then he got caught for all the stuff he was on. So it kind of taints his legacy.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It kind of lends itself to why the division is so exciting, probably for someone like yourself who's analyzing the other fighters in your weight category. And then even for the fans, like there's so much parity and depth to the division. But your opponent's resume, I mean, we kind of touched on it before. I mean, I feel like this would be a great opponent at this juncture in your career, just even in as far as like the experience Pedro Munhoz has and some of the guys that he's fought. I mean, you referenced Dominic Cruz. I mean, he got in there with him, and then Sean O'Malley, who was also referenced, fought Munoz, Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar. Like you could truly go on. Aljamain Sterling also. Like, what are your thoughts on just his deep resume and I guess some of the skills that Pedro Munhoz brings to the table in this matchup?
Yeah, man, he's a very consistent performer. He's a very interesting guy because none of these guys were able to put him away. Even the ones that beat him, nobody can put him away. And if you look at the last couple of fights, he's faced a lot of adversity. He's gotten rocked. He's gotten cut. He's gotten poked in the eye. He still he keeps coming, keeps standing there in front of your face. He won't be denied in a sense, which is really interesting. He's mentally strong, 100%. He's been doing karate since he's 3 years old. He's been doing jiu-jitsu since he's 13. He's got a lot of experience, and I'm ready to go all 15 minutes with him. But I'm looking to make a point in this fight. Like I feel like I still solidified myself in the UFC with the last one, beating someone who was undefeated, 15-0, who's supposed to be their next big star and all that. And I feel like this one just separates me from everyone else as well, like outside the top 15. And hopefully, a win over Pedro, then they consider me in the top 15.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of even touched on it there. Like, I think this matchmaking sort of is derivative of the UFC, kind of like seeing that from the last performance, like just handing that first loss to, Basharat, and now they're giving you like such a tenured well-established fighter in Munhoz, it would seem like they see that potential for upward mobility with you. I mean, just even in general, just in how you're progressing in your career. But I mean, it could certainly behoove you for getting in that rankings conversation too, as you sort of touched on.
Yeah, it would be great, and just to keep the streak going too. Like if I get to 5 wins in a row, and there's not many other guys who do it, I think that also lends into maybe they should consider me for top 15 or whatever. But ultimately, it's gonna be the performance on the night. If I win and it doesn't look good, they're not putting me in. That's for sure. But if I win and I make myself look good and the performance is there, I feel like it's gonna be close to undeniable.
And that's kind of interesting how you phrase it because like the last time we were speaking, I really got the sense that you were someone who's all about like just getting in more of like a flow state and being adaptable with where the fight might go. But as you're kind of talking about this certain quality of performance you want to have, like, is there a specific, I guess, progression of events that would be, I guess, representative of that to you? Or is it even as I guess like more broadly defined as like finishing inside the distance? Like what would be, I guess, representative of the kind of performance you're sort of talking about there, you think?
Well, something that people want to take a look at and understand why I do what I do. You know what I mean? Kind of like it was interesting because let's say like the last fight with Javid is that they were talking about how I'm walking backwards. I wasn't the one walking forward the entirety of the fight, but it was for me. It was like, look, there's two ways. There's two ways to close the distance. One is I walk forward, he doesn't move, distance is closed. The other one is I walk backwards, he steps in, I step in, I close the distance. You know. So like I want to perform in a way where people like maybe on the surface you don't understand why it's working. But then if you rewatch it and you pay attention, you start thinking, "Oh, wait a second, we should study this because there's ways. There's something he's doing that is not obvious. That is, like Braulio Estima calls this jiu-jitsu invisible jiu-jitsu. Like people only see the surface but don't understand why it's working. That's kind of the performances I want to have. I want to do things that work, and people have to figure out how come it's working. Like I want them to try to get into my mind and see why I do what I do. You know.
Yeah, no, for sure. I get what you're laying down in that sense, man. It's been great getting to talk to you though and have you on the program. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. A lot of great insights to be had, but curious if maybe you had a final parting thought you wanted to add as we're wrapping up here. Hey, man, I do appreciate you coming on MMA Canada to chat today.
Well, thanks for having me on. No, just last parting thoughts. Hope the Canadian crowd shows up. I'm excited to see everybody. I'm excited to celebrate with all of you when we win. Got a lot of Canadian fighters on the card. Let's show some support for all of them on social media for everyone. And hopefully this time Team Canada comes home undefeated, man. Let's just all get wins that night. That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's going to be a great night, man, and just so many cool facets. Like I said, the new amendment to the unified rules, this being the first event for that and everything. And just, yeah, it seems like you've also been doing great stuff with like the analyst work with like unified MMA and Sportsnet.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of working in a little bit of an extra shout out there, but cool to see that there's been some growth in that regard. I know that was a particular point of importance for you, it seemed like.
Yeah, of course. Listen, I'm just setting up, for the future when I retire. I want to have a good career in this industry and MMA in general, and it's like, I was talking to my friends and I was telling them my reason why I love to fight is because everything I'm building in terms of hard work in the gym and knowledge and experience and traveling the world and training with all these different people, it's not all for naught, I'm gonna make money somehow after too, and it's all gonna keep going. And I want to stay in this world, and I never want to leave MMA. For me, it's such a great place. It's such a dream come true to be able to make money doing what I love. I don't feel like I go to work every day. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm hanging out with my homeboys and we're doing what we like to do and we're solving problems we like to focus on. And I want to keep the good times going.
Yeah, well, the next chapter of that good time story unfurling on November 2nd. Definitely excited for this UFC Edmonton card overall and this Pedro Munhoz fight, as I was kind of saying from the top, definitely one of the more intriguing matchups on the event. So to reiterate, Aiemann, thanks so much for coming on MMA Canada today, and you have a good rest of your day, man. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thanks, Dylan, for having me on. I appreciate you.